Good morning and welcome to my kitchen. Today, a chorizo and potato tart from our new book. Okay, so chorizo tart. This is absolutely delicious. It starts with short crust pastry, really easy to make. Go to our website, petersidwell.com. You can get the recipe there, or obviously you can get it in the book. Now, we need to roll this pastry out. So, a little bit of flour on the top, a little bit underneath. Start with the shape you want to finish with, okay? So we are going to bake it in our crusty bake. Now, you'll see loose bottom, fluted, perforated. So it's got little holes in it, all right? Which means you don't get a soggy bottom. And it also means if you use these, you don't have to blind bake, which I think is always a plus because it allows the steam out, keeps it all crusty. They're brilliant. Cookserveandenjoy.com and get your own. Right, roll, turn, okay? And that is the way that I handle short crust pastry. Obviously, we're very lucky. We've got these beautiful worktops. They're cold because they're like a ceramic worktop. So they're super cold all the time, which is perfect for rolling out pastry.
Does it just have to be short crust?
Yeah, it does. You don't want puff pastry for this because you don't want the lift. You just want a really good, solid short crust pastry, and it's always 2-to-1 ratio. 2 parts flour, 1 part fat. So this is a butter pastry that I've made, but you could do a margarine if you wanted to. You could do a ratio of lard to butter as well, which generally, arguably, makes the best pastry, but not many people use lard these days. You can actually make olive oil pastry out of olive oil as well. It's not easy, and you have to sort of treat it a bit differently and be patient with it, but it can be done for your dairy-freers out there. But then I'm about to put milk and eggs in this one, so not so much. Okay, so I just did that without even thinking. So let's go back to the beginning. So we'll just give this a nice little roll out. Okay, so this is, 2 or 3 mil thick, okay? All we're going to do now, rather than lift this pastry up and potentially tear it, fold it over like that, fold it over like that, okay? Now, I can pick it up with one hand and it's not stretching. Bring your tin in, lay it in and unfold it, okay? And that means you're not stretching the pastry at all, okay? So it makes it so much easier. Now, to continue that non-stretching thing, don't just push your fingers in like that and stretch it. Tuck it in. So bring it into the center and then roll it back out so that the pastry sits into the corners, okay? So what I would do is almost fold everything in like that and then unfold it into the corners, up the sides of the tart tin, okay? Make sense?
Yeah.
And then run your fingers around. Don't stretch the pastry. Just push it into the corners, okay? We don't want to stretch it. Because if you stretch the pastry, it's thinner. Then when you add liquid, it finds the thinnest part of the pastry, and that's when you can bust a leak. All right? And we don't want that. We don't want to bust a leak. Right, now that is lined and ready to go, put it in the fridge, let it rest while we make the filling. Right, while our pastry is resting, let's talk filling. Okay, I've got potatoes, I've got chorizo, I've got onion. You could also use shallots, which is what I've put in the recipe, but I couldn't get shallots today, so I've gone onion. I've got garlic, I've got thyme, and I've got some manchego cheese, okay? If you can't get manchego, cheddar's okay. It's slightly different. You could also use parmesan, which is very similar, okay?
That saltiness that you want.
Yeah, and sort of that, I always just think that bit of cheese in like an egg mixture kind of binds it and gives it more richness, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, we're going to take our onion, cut it in half. Everything needs to be cut thinly for this dish to work, okay? So just in half and then just push your knife through and drag it back.
Do you use a mandolin for this if you didn't?
You could.
But it's
Yeah.
risky.
It's always risky using a mandolin, isn't it? Always. There's always an element of risk and danger. But if you've got a good sharp knife, so this is the 20cm cook's knife, it's the edge keeper, okay? And that little red bit there has got a sharpener in. So every time you put it back in, sharpens it. Every time you take it out, sharpens it. Which is great for a family where everyone's using that knife to cook with. Because I always think knives are great if only you sharpen them. There aren't many family homes where only one person uses the knife. Do you know what I mean? Whereas with this, everyone who puts it in, takes it out, it will always be the same sharpen. Okay? So, nice and thin. Because we want it to all cook at the same time. So it's a good knife skills job, this one. But like Emily's saying, if you've got a mandolin, you're happy to use that, go for it. Not a problem. The thinner the better. I actually think like on a box grater, you get a slicer on the side as well. You could use that if you wanted to. But what you don't want is big, thick chunks of onion. Because then otherwise that's all you'll taste. Like a quiche. It's kind of a quiche dish, isn't it?
I like tarts like this.
Yeah.
It's just quite like filling and it's real good. I think quite an autumnal type.
It is autumnal, I think, and it certainly feels like autumn comes so quick, doesn't it? I mean, we've had a rubbish summer this year.
I think we've been in autumn since July.
I know. Right, clove garlic. It's optional. You don't have to put it in if you don't want to.
You have to put garlic and things.
I like to put a bit of garlic in there. So just chop that nice and fine. Because again, what you don't want is massive chunks of garlic in it. You want it to sort of just blend through the dish. Obviously, it's quite a big, excuse me, it's quite a big clove of garlic, this, which I'm quite happy about. But obviously, if you don't like lots of garlic, then just put a little bit in, okay? Fresh thyme from the garden, that's about all. Thyme, rosemary and bay is pretty much all that's going to be growing in the garden at this time of year in the UK. But it will keep going all winter long.
Do you use dried herbs, Pete?
I don't like dried herbs. You know that. Fresh thyme, actually fresh thyme's kind of, it's all right, but it's so easy to grow in the garden.
Yeah.
There kind of isn't a reason for it in my house.
Yeah. Do you prefer using fresh herbs?
Fresh, certainly for the more robust sort of wintry herbs. Fresh thyme, fresh rosemary, fresh bay. I don't think there's any need to have dried of those.
No.
Fresh basil literally is pointless in my opinion.
Dried basil.
Dried basil, sorry, yeah, is literally pointless because there's no flavour to it. There's only got flavour in fresh. Fresh parsley. You can't dry parsley.
No, I feel like dried basil smells a bit like a tea leaf type.
It's just useless. The whole point of basil is for it to be fresh and vibrant and delicious. Right, chorizo. So this is the cured one. Okay, so this is edible straight away. You'd have to cook this. But it means I can slice it nice and thin. Okay, so what we're going to try and do, and if I show you in the book, we've done layers, but we've done layers that are upright, not horizontal. They're vertical, so that all the top bits get nice and crispy. If you can't be bothered, layer it that way. It's okay. It'll all taste the same. Okay, so what I'm going to do, cut the sausage in half, and then let's just take our time and slice it on about a 45-degree angle as thinly as you can. Okay, like this. And just take your time. Sliced super thin, look, yeah? The thinner it's sliced, the more surface area, the more flavour is going to marry all together, okay? So that needs to go in with our onions, okay? Now, potatoes. I've just bought some little baby potatoes here. You could, but what I'm trying to do is when I slice these up, if they're too big, they won't sit snug in the tin.
Yeah.
So you don't want them too big, otherwise you're going to have to cut them in half, okay? So all I'm going to do is just slice them, and again, super, super thin. Like, if you can cut them that thin, it'll be delicious. Yeah, yeah, literally. Like, take your time.
So baby potatoes are the best potatoes.
Yeah, just like, or like a, you know, a new potato. I've also got a mandolin as well. You could just do it like that if you want. Just take your time, be really careful. What I tend to do is just get to the point where Emily's going like there, and then I stop. Okay? So you get them a nice, consistent, thin layer. It's one of those things with a mandolin. You start doing it really carefully, and then you get complacent. That's when you cut yourself.
Watch what you're doing, man, when you do it.
I am.
Jeez,
It's just adding a bit of jeopardy for the viewer. And then it'll cut to like the ambulance driving off.
Potatoes and
Yeah, red potatoes. Right. Okay, so I have sliced them. Look, they're all really, really thin. Let's get those in with the chorizo, okay? And then we're just going to add our cheese. So, in with everything. Now, grate the cheese straight in. And we're going to give this a really good mix. Get all the flavours marrying together, which is the important thing for this. Because they all work. They're all like best friends in here. Potatoes, garlic, onions, cheese, chorizo, thyme, salt, pepper. They're all going to just work together.
Is this something you could make in advance and then put in the pie?
Yeah, you could, but you just got to watch the potatoes don't oxidize too quickly. You could, and there's moisture in there, so you could you can make the pastry case, put that in the freezer for another day. Have two for them all, they're great. Love cheese.
Never guessed.
Right, little season, not too much salt because we've got the chorizo in there, but plenty of black pepper, don't be afraid of that. Right, there we go. And then let's just mix it all together. If you wanted it spicy, you could use a spicy chorizo, or you could add a bit of fresh chili if you wanted to. A few dried chili flakes, whatever you fancy. You could add coriander stalk into here. That would work. Coriander loves these flavours. There we go. Right, let's get our pastry case and we'll make this. Okay, pastry has cooled. It's relaxed. So when you roll pastry out, you're kind of pushing it and pushing it and pushing it with the rolling pin. And it naturally wants to spring back a little bit. So if you make this and do all this too quickly in the oven, the pastry will just shrink back, and that's when it all goes wrong. What you've got to do is rest pastry between stages, because this is nice and cold now, and that means it's rested and it's taken its form. So what we're going to do now, and this is a bit time consuming, I'm not going to lie, it takes a while, but it's worth it. So all I'm doing is piece of chorizo, piece of potato, piece of chorizo, piece of potato. Not sure how long I can keep this up. Piece of chorizo, piece of potato. Keep going. Just build it up in your hand. Well, it doesn't matter if you miss one, but you get the idea, yeah? And then we're just going to lay that upright, like so. Okay? We actually created this dish. I think this is maybe 5 years old, this recipe.
Yeah.
And it's never really made it to fruition apart from the photograph. And then obviously it went into the book because I just felt like it's got such a nice kind of combination. It's like very gratifying, this. It's just a lovely combination of flavors, very ingredient led. It's all about the chorizo and the potato. And then just creating something to deliver that flavor combination in. Okay, but can you see how it's just sort of taking its form now? And we're just layering it up. And what you find by doing it this way is you end up with like little gaps and little bits of space in there, which is good because we're then going to fill the egg mixture into that. But it gives it the space to cook. And I think that is why it works so well. What do you think they'd think of this then, Carlos, in Spain?
nice.
Yeah?
Yeah. I never see this cooking before.
You can eat it, Carlos, when it's done.
I will, you know.
I know.
Everybody knows.
So add in the last couple of pieces there, but you can see now we've alternated the potato, chorizo. It doesn't have to be every other. It can be, you know, it can be whatever you want it to be. But there's lots of space in between all those lovely slices there. So what we're going to do is just add a little bit more of the cheese, because that's just going to melt in there lovely. And then it is ready. So I'm just going to pop it on a tray because it's easier for me to get it to the oven like that. And then we want 6 eggs.
Show off.
I know. Why use 2 hands when you can use 1?
I feel like I'd take longer trying to cook it with one hand.
The amount of eggs I must have cracked over the years. You have to learn to do it with 1 hand because you're always multitasking in the kitchen, aren't you?
Yeah.
Always. Always whisk your eggs first, then add your liquid. So I've got milk and cream in here. Just a little bit of cream, just to kind of make it lovely. You don't have to add it if you don't want to. Just substitute it for milk.
Why do you whisk your eggs for?
Because you've got to evenly distribute the eggs through the milk. And if you don't beat the eggs, when you beat eggs with milk, you end up with like threads of egg yolk. So if you need to beat the eggs first, break them down, and then dilute it with milk.
Every day to throw away?
Isn't it just? And then just pour it in, but then wait. Let it rest. Let it find all the little gaps, because otherwise you'll be like, oh, it's full, right, off to the oven. And then it will have found all the little gaps and everything. But what I would urge you not to do is fill it right to the very top so it covers everything, because I like the fact that that's going to go crispy. All right, so a little bit more, but that's it. But if you can you see, if I lift that up, Emily, can you see all the little bits there that are going to, if I fold that down, look at all the little bits that are stood up. They're going to go super crispy. Can you see those? They're sort of sitting above the line of egg mixture. So one last thing. Now we'll trim the pastry. Because I didn't want to stretch it, you see. So all we're going to do now is just run a knife around it. All the fillings in place. And it means my pastry will not shrink in the oven. And because we're using crusty bake, we don't need to part bake it, or blind bake it, some would call it. So that's now going to go into the oven until that pastry is golden and crispy and the mixture is firm. And the best way to test if it's ready, just pull out a little piece of potato and have a bite. If that's cooked, everything else will be ready. Chorizo tart is baked. Look at that bad boy. How delicious does that look? And you can look, get down here and you can see, you know, the little bits of chorizo and the little bits of potato. Got the crispy bits. That's what we want. Crispy bits. Okay, so this is a loose bottom tin. So in theory, I should be able to just pick this up. I'm going to put that on there. And I should be able to drop this down. Oh, there we go. Look, tiny little bit there. Let me just tease this bit out. A little bit of teasing to do here. There we go. Look at that tart. That is a serious piece of pastry work. So what we've got in here is a reminder for you. We've got a beautiful, simple, buttery pastry. We have then got layers of chorizo, potato, onions, thyme, garlic, and manchego, but not horizontal layers. We've got vertical layers. So we end up with these lovely little, look at that little crispy bit there. Can you see that, Carlos?
Yeah, just about.
So you get all the little crispy bits. And then there are all the other ingredients that are underneath the egg mixture have just cooked. They're nice and soft. They're ready to go. This is a banging chorizo and potato tart. You can get the recipe in this little book. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.